This week is an interesting week. So we're coming up on nearly midterms. Nobody freak out because midterms, we're going to spend an entire week getting prepped for midterms. Next week will be kind of jam-packed. This week, however, will be a little light. And that's for two purposes. One, I only want you guys to kind of like chew on new knowledge when we're talking about operators. And we're going to talk about very lightly introducing what a loop is, or at least not even I won't even say loops, iterating through a list, which doesn't mean anything to you now. I recognize that, but we're going to talk about it shortly. More importantly to me is that we solidify the foundation because at the end of this week, the pace is going to quicken. With the pace quickening, we're also going to have a lot of different types of content. And I want to introduce some of that content to you tonight. One of my favorite parts about this class, and something that we can't get into earlier in the class, which is unfortunate, and it tends to dissuade a lot of people from going through, is the project based applications, the group projects that we work on to solve a common problem. When we have a fuller class, the way this works is I usually break us up into like three groups. We all pick a business model, a business name. You guys have full control over all that stuff. And then I give you tasks to complete as basically your own self-ran business. And you can decide, who does what, if you want to all chip in, if you want to have say in it, or if you want to specialize in certain things. Completely possible and altogether doable. So while we're not quite there yet, where we get into these massively collaborative group projects, this is going to be kind of an introduction to a programming project. And to try to simulate that as best we can, even though I put the the assignment on the Canvas shell just now for us, I'd like to attempt at least the first part of this project, this assignment, together as a group. And the way that works is we're just going to start thinking aloud. We're going to start throwing stuff off of each other, seeing what sticks, and then if you guys need some help in there, I'm here to support you. And I do this for a couple of reasons. One, groupthink for coding is amazing. It's absolutely incredible. Two, this exactly duplicates what it's like in a production environment. Um, from from the work environments that I worked at, team-based coding work environments, we typically had like blue team, red team, or like delta, alpha team, and we would do like pre-production or alpha revisions of code, and then we'd have interns come through and clean some stuff up, and then we'd move into like a production phase and try to clean it up before we push out a project. Uh, that to be said, a lot of that was working collaboratively, teaming up with other coders, other specialists in certain areas and certain niches of languages, and trying to create the best application we can within the smallest amount of time while using the least amount of resources. And that's the way it works, right? You choose two out of three and figure out what you can do. You can have it fast, you can have it cheap, or you can have it good. So preferably good and preferably fast, but we'll see what happens there. So this project, I'm going to try and emulate that. I'm going to open this up. I've got two modes of this project. There's one that's called assisted and one that's called hardcore mode. Assisted has a bunch of helpers in there. It basically gives you hints about what code you're going to be using, what tools in your toolbox you should be implementing at each phase in the code. The code has levels and you work up, and I don't want to say necessarily increased difficulty, but it definitely builds upon itself. And then there's a hardcore mode where I just have the instructions and then what the expected output is, and you're free to do whatever you want. There's going to be some people that like the challenge and they're like, hey, bring on hardcore mode. And there's going to be some people who are like, yeah, give me a couple of hints. But either way, I want you to feel comfortable sharing, working, and collaborating. So I'm going to start opening up the discussion boards. I'm going to start putting the assignments out 2 weeks in advance, and I want you guys to freely share and help each other out. I don't consider it cheating when you're giving each other a leg up because code is a cerebral process, but it's also can be a beautifully collaborative process. That's a long introduction for the projects and the assignments that we're going to be having, but they're going to be a little deeper, a little more robust, and less superficial than filling out a worksheet starting from right after midterm. And next week is all going to be starting to prep and get into a little deeper things. So I wanted to give you some preface on that. Are there any questions about this? Any concerns? Any fears? Anything like that? Let's hear it. All right. Well, if something crops up, you let me know, guys. Um, because we're not in person, uh, I would like to consider myself a near silent member of your team. I'll be there to help out. This seems to be a core group that meets together regularly. I'm going to try and offer additional support for those who cannot make the live lecture sessions, but I want to start. We're going to get to a point where we've learned all the fundamentals of the language that we can initially, and what we really need are reps. Just getting in there and banging your head against the wall until you have that aha moment. And that's kind of the cool part about programming, if you ask me, is like living for those aha moments. So I'm going to try to ease you into this wall head banging phase, but along the way provide as many aha moments to make you think, man, this coding stuff is pretty cool. I mean, it's got some benefits to it. So are we good with that, guys?
Yeah.
Cool. All right,
Yeah.
sounds good. There are going to be some people who just cannot work in groups. There are a lot of difficulties with, the communication method via being online. Um, any of these projects will be doable on one-off situations. I want you to feel comfortable reaching out to each other and myself to kind of get you through anything that hangs you up or gets you stuck. And that's why I want to start doing these projects in the live lecture. And we're going to try and mix it up half and half. Half is going to be theory, half is going to be kicking some code around. All right, are we ready to get started with the first one?
Yep.
Boom, we're doing it. Okay. I'm going to start sharing my screen for a moment. All right, so this is pretty much what it's going to look like. And this might look really scary, but I want to kind of describe this to you, the way this works. This is obviously the hardcore document. There is a softer core document or an assisted document, as I said before. But we're going to work together on the hardcore, and we're going to kind of see, where the deficits, where the gaps in our knowledge are, and that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing at all. Every assignment will start with a doc string. The intent is to tell you what we're going to be doing, what the point of this assignment is, and then get you used to authoring, commenting, literally thinking through your code by typing it out and then solving some problems as a collective unit. Let's see if I can get this going. I'm not even going to try to present this. So this week, we probably won't get through many of these, but I want to go through the list assignment together as a class. We're going to start doing this 50-50 split. We'll probably start 70-30, 70 theory, 30 assignment. Um, but it should be enough to make the actual assignment classwork much easier, but also give you a lot more insight on how others think in the programming space. We're going to talk about some more list methods, some more actions that we can do with lists, and then if there's time, we're going to get into operators. If we don't get into operators, I don't want you to freak out. I would say operators are probably the simplest part of any programming language, and also the most ubiquitous and universal part of the programming languages. There are some nuances here, but assignments look like assignments in almost every programming language. Summing numbers, dividing numbers. There are a few keyword differences, and I'll bring those up. But especially the high-level object-oriented programming languages, they're going to look very familiar. So I'll do a follow-up video without being live, and I'll put that out there. And I think you'll see that it's pretty simple stuff. All right, but let's get into this first assignment. And before I do that, I'm going to make this a little larger for everybody. I'm also going to be putting out a, let's go 24. 24 font size sounds good. I'm also going to be putting out a little bit of a primer on how I set up my work environment. I think I told you guys before, I like Visual Studio Code just because I'm kind of forced into it from some of my other uh, coding habits and my development structures. So I kind of rely on everything that it provides. But I've used a large variety of other IDE environments. That's kind of repetitive. Other IDEs for a multitude of languages. So, has anybody here ever used a different IDE than the one I'm showing you? And I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. Um, Hoshang, you've got a pretty like strict regiment for work, don't you?
Yes. At my work, the developers used Visual Studio 17.
Oh, 17. Okay. So
Yeah.
the real deal, not the free version. Yeah, Visual Studio 17. That's good. Excellent. Now, for your practices at work, do you have teams that build out their own libraries for work, or do you do you lean on GitHub to get publicly available libraries for what you do?
No, we use GitHub.
Okay, got it. And that's we'll talk about that as a class. We'll go through GitHub probably the second to last week of the semester, which is basically an online space, a repository for other applications and libraries that you can put in your code to make your code a little easier, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Anybody else have any other IDEs or experiences, programming languages that they want to share, that they have some fun with? Usually the class is like 50-50 split. Like half is I've never used anything before. I don't know what the hell is going on. The other half is like I feel very strongly about whatever this is.
I have
I
no idea what's
use
going on. Can you
Fair
remind
I
me
enough.
what
use
an IDE
Replit.
is?
I have no idea either.
Right on. I like that. That's cool. I mean, good. It's a learning experience for everybody. I
What
used to
a
go ahead.
what was
Sorry.
an IDE? Sorry.
It's an integrated development environment. So that's a great question, Harley. So instead of relying on the interpreter at the command line to do stuff, whoops, why it's not a method. Instead of relying on the interpreter or using the basic idle scripting uh, uh, platform that comes with Python, IDEs have a little more pizzazz about them. Yeah, I want to kill this. Thank you. You can see one thing, it colors some of the code. It also has what's called linting. It gives you little hints on what you should type. You can hover over certain functions or certain methods, and it'll give you a little more information. A lot of people find it overwhelming in the beginning, and then you get kind of used to it, and you're like, oh, this is helpful. And then when you get really good, you just find that it gets in the way. I try to keep the linting off for most of my stuff. Um, I like to use particularly this setup. This is my instructor setup because I use what's called REPL, and REPL will let us see the code in action without me having to um, go through and do a compile process to print out the code. But that video that I'm going to put out there is going to give you a step-by-step demonstration on how to duplicate my setup. So I don't want you to worry about this, and it's going to be easy to follow. But without further ado, do you want to give this practice with list assignments some fun? Some a good college try. We're doing this together, guys. It's going to be great. I promise. Does anybody have any other questions before we get started?
I'm pretty lost in the sauce here, but I think I'm gonna just try to follow along and see if I can catch up.
Okay. Well, Harley, I'm going to make it super easy to set this up, and you're going to find that it's a lot more forgiving once you had that installation under your belt. Essentially, you're going to get a screen that you load in these Python files. The assignment will tell you how to do it step by step, and it'll give you this. Each one of these projects that have different levels, it's going to tell you exactly what we're trying to do at each level. So that way, you don't have to feel like, oh, I couldn't get the whole thing. It's blowing me out. You could at least learn and move up little by little, and you can also help each other out by saying, all right, I got to level 3. Anybody else on level 3? I'm like, no, I'm on level 2, man. I'm like, oh, okay, well, this is my solution for level 2. But we're going to see how this works together. So first things first, let's jump. I'd like you to fill out the doc string with your name, any notes that you have as you're going through it. Keep this thing alive. Keep this as kind of like a working document, as you a living, breathing document that lets you figure out, lets you put down your thoughts as you're filling this out. But we're starting with level 1. And level 1 is saying, oh, well, this is a holdover from the assisted one. It's fixed a declaration of the list, the garage list. What this one should be is create a list called garage with 2 elements in it, Ferrari and Corvette. I'm pretty sure we know how to do that. So do you guys want to talk through it together? Does somebody want to share screen and they can drive? I can drive. How do you want to do this? I'll leave this up to you. All right, well, I'll drive, but for right now, but if somebody's like, hey, I want to get down on this, then I'll gladly share screen and let you do it. So let's fix this really quick. We're actually going to be declaring a list named garage with 2 elements, Ferrari and Corvette. So what's our first step? All right, we all know this. Come on, guys.
Type garage with a bracket, Ferrari.
All right, I'm just going to start typing. You tell me if I'm missing something. So can I just go garage is? No, can't go garage is.
You have to have an equal sign to assign it, right?
Boom, exactly. And that equal sign is called an assignment operator. Excellent, Harley. All right, so a list. What tells the interpreter that we're about to start working with a list?
Brackets.
That's right.
Box brackets.
Exactly. That's right. Square brackets, box brackets, and you'll notice because I'm using an IDE, I just hit the 1 box bracket and it automatically put the closing bracket in there. Also, I'd like you to point out to you guys. Oops. Let me get this out of the way. Get my big mug out of the way. This little add-on that I'm using called REPL, it's starting to take note of all the things I'm doing and keeping track of it. So right now I created an empty list and it says, hey, I see a list called garage. So let's move forward. I want to add Ferrari and I want to add Corvette in there. Can I just type Ferrari?
In quotes.
In quotes, that's right.
In quotes.
All right.
Comma.
Before we move into quotes, I want to show you something about an IDE that makes it really helpful. So I did something wrong right here. IDEs are quick to tell you when you screw up. Because right here I already got a red box that's saying there's an error of some kind. And also, this add-on that I'm using, REPL, is saying traceback. It's because that's the troubleshooting framework. But saying line 22 in this module's unnamed. So saying line 22, name error. Name Ferrari is not defined. Because without quotes, the interpreter assumes that I'm trying to use an existing variable, but there's no variable Ferrari. So if I change that and I add Ferrari in quotes, suddenly the variable list changes. Now garage, the list, has 1 element, and that element is Ferrari. All right, cool. We're moving along then. This is good. So I got to add Corvette. So I'm just going to type in Corvette, right?
Comma.
That's right. Exactly. Comma Corvette. When you have elements in a list, you need to separate them. And in Python, most programming languages, the list elements are parsed with a comma. All right. So far, level 1 is, we're going to get rid of this one for right now. We'll call it done. Declare a list garage with 2 elements, Ferrari and Corvette. We've got our garage list, Ferrari and Corvette, and then we have a list of our variables. It's saying Ferrari and Corvette's in there. Harley, I know this is a little unique and different. Whoa. But are you kind of seeing some of the value in the IDE so far?
I am. I'm trying to multitask right now and set mine up because I downloaded it, but I never
Okay.
added the Python extension, so I'm trying to add the Python extension right now.
All right, cool. I'm trying to think of what I use in this one.
I'm using 2 computers and a phone, so I'm all over the place.
You're the man. A REPL will get you started. I'll give you a list of my favorite ones in that video, but that's that'll help you at least get some visual action without having to open up the terminal right away. All right, so we have successfully completed level 1 out of level 6. And this is pretty much the way the projects roll themselves out. Granted, there's going to be a lot more information in the beginning, and there's going to be a lot more complexity in the levels, but I think this is an accurate, honest representation of how the projects will work, and you're free to use your compatriots to make it happen. This is, I'll be honest, this is my first time doing this in a fully online environment. It's a lot easier. Well, I shouldn't say it's a lot easier because I don't know. To me, it feels a lot more intuitive when I can put you guys in groups around computer stations and kind of chat and share. But, I mean, we're both learning at this point. How do we feel about this so far?
I like it.
Okay. All right. Good. You know what? I am not above criticism, so if there's something we can change to make it a little better, more succinct, I'm all about it. All right, so level 2, here we go. We are told to append or add to the end of garage a new element named Ducati. Oh, look, I left a little hinter here. I should have done that for the hardcore mode. Oh well. But I do want to point out in hardcore mode, even though I call it hardcore mode, it's typically somewhat forgiving. I'm telling you, like, to append, that happens to be the name of the method we're using. I even go so far as to put in, you know, quotes to let you know that there's going to be a string. So I try to give you a little hint here or there. But I'm going to get rid of this so we can see if we can do this purely on our own. All right, so we're going to append to garage a new element. All right, so I'm going to go under level 2 or under print level 2 here. All right, how am I going to get started with this?
Garage.
Okay, garage
Dot.
sounds good if I could type.
Dot append.
Dot append, okay. Is that it?
In parentheses. Comma. Not comma. Excuse me. Quotes.
Quotes.
Ducati.
Ducati, exactly. That's spot on. All right, so I want us all to take note. We're using append, which is a method. Methods have the parentheses. And let's take a look. We can always double check ourselves by going in REPL and taking a look. Garage now consists of Ferrari, Corvette, and Ducati. All right, so hey, we knocked out number 1. Okay, number 2 is to print garage. So that one's pretty simple. We can use the print function. And then, so for garage, would we do quote garage? Would this work?
No, because it's a
No.
variable.
That's right, exactly. Garage has been declared earlier in the program. So we can use garage without quotes, and we will get the object garage that we established here. And then sure enough, if we look in the, see here we have our variable output. This is our print output. So this represents things that we've created. This represents things that we're saying. So far we've said level 1, we've said level 2, and now we're saying return to me, give me all the items that are in garage. Congrats, we've just completed level 2. You guys feeling this so far? I feel like you're a little unsure.
It makes sense.
Okay. I wish we could all be together. It'd be really lively. People are, I don't know, laughing, having fun with the code, making mistakes and making fun of each other for it. I mean, it's good stuff, but it's a little different here, granted. Okay. Somebody read to me, if you can, the level 3 instructions.
Create a variable new bike and assign the value zx1r to it.
Okay, let's do it. All right, so variable declaration starts with the name of the variable. We need to assign to it, and it looks like it's going to be a string. So zx1r.
Is there a reason that you capitalize the B in bike?
Yeah, actually, that's a great question. Thank you, Harley. This is called camel case notation. This is one of the conventions that you'll see. There's snake convention, there's camel case convention, and it really depends on how you can make your code most readable. So if I were to put new bike, that may be easy to read for some people. It may be difficult to read for some people. You'll see a lot of people who are old like Fortran programmers, and their variables look like this. But typically, what you're going to see in for those that are, I would say, more modern programmers, they use what's called camel case. It starts with a lowercase and then it begins an uppercase. The next
So it
word.
only serves the function of being more readable. So
Exactly.
you can
That's all
differentiate
it
words
is.
easier.
Exactly.
Okay.
I'd also like to point out too, if you see new bike capital B, new bike lowercase b, those are actually completely different variables
Right.
because it's case sensitive. Harley, great question, dude. That was spot on. Excellent. All right. All right, so we're rocking and rolling. We have done what was asked of us. Creating a variable new bike and assigning the value zx1r to it. Create a variable, assign the string. Easy peasy. All right, so this is going to be the first time it gets fun. I'm so tempted to take this off. Let's take this off. Don't cheat. Don't look, guys. Don't look at this. All right. Somebody take a swing at reading level 4 for us. Just up to number 1.
We want our bikes in the garage first. Using the pop method, remove the Ducati and add it to the front of the list.
All right. You can go ahead and read this hint. Why not?
Oh. Remember, pop is great for using an item as we remove it. Insert is used for selecting where you want something.
Okay. So this is the first time I think that we're starting to use some of our new methods that we learned about. And we also have an opportunity to be creative. I think you'll see when you get into some of the more advanced projects, there's always more than one way to skin a cat. And I think this is probably the first experience that we're going to have doing that. So I'm gonna let you guys drive. I'll type. You tell me what I'm doing here. I'll muse aloud actually while you guys think. And when something strikes you and it just ruminates with you, throw it back. All right. So we have a list. Our list consists of Ferrari, Corvette, Ducati. Lists are ordered. They typically go, they're what's called a push stack. So the first thing in is going to be the first thing there. But we're trying to move what's at the end to the beginning. We do have a couple tools. We can always remove the item, and then we could use insert to put it where we want to. But we also know that we have a function called pop. Pop is cool because it lets us take something off the end of the stack, the end of the list. So what do you say we start with that? Do you want to start by just popping and see what happens?
Sure.
All right, let's do it. So how would we invoke? How would we get pop to work? It is a method for an object.
You pop parentheses and then the name of the list, which in this case would be garage.
Well, let's give it a shot. Let's try it. All right, looks like we got it. Go ahead,
Go.
please.
I was saying, how do you recall the position? I forget what the input was for it. I know it's in position 2.
So I'm sorry. Say that one more time, Harley. I didn't quite get
So
that.
Ducati was the third item on the garage list, right? So how do we, when we're popping from garage, how do you identify that you want to pop that position from the list?
Great question. Excellent question. Pop by default without a parameter. Harley's a great question because it's going to give us a hint on what this error means. Pop by default is taking something off the list. So if you just had a pop without any parameters, without anything in the parentheses, it would take the last thing off the list. If you put in a number or an integer, what it would do is it would take off whatever is at that index. So remember index 0, index 1, index 2, and that's what would be pulled off.
How do you identify? I know it's the last one, so you don't need one then, right? But what was the command to identify the index that you want to pop?
To identify the index that we want to pop?
Yeah.
Um,
So like if it wasn't the last thing on the list garage, how do you specify that you want to pop Ducati from the list?
oh, before we get to that, it's a good question. I'm gonna pull up the slide to show you, but it uses two commands together, and I don't wanna confuse it right now. But you said something so key, and I wanna hone in on that, and then while we're doing that, I'll pull up the slide so we can see it. So pop, the parameter for the pop is an item in the list, which is a good indicator that the list should probably not be inside the parentheses. So if we're going to attach an action onto something, onto another object, do you guys remember how we have this little period? It's like attaching it to something. So we put the thing that we want to attach it to, and then we put the method. Do you guys remember that?
I do remember that. I just couldn't remember before.
Really quickly, let me go back to Harley's question and bring this up. I'll pull this over here. So I don't know if you can see this. So here's remove. Remove lets you pull off something if you don't know where it is in the list. The only thing with remove is it doesn't let you use it while you're pulling it off. That's why we're using pop. So let's see if we can. Did that answer your question, Harley? About what we would use if we didn't know the name, or we didn't know the index, the location, but we knew the name?
Kind of. Well, what I was asking is how, when you're doing the garage dot pop, then how do you specify which index if you did know the index?
Oh, got it. Good question. And now I see what you're saying. So what we would do is we go dot pop and then a number, just an integer. A
Just the
single.
index. You just place the index.
Exactly.
Okay.
Sorry, I misunderstood your question. So this, it takes a single parameter, and that would be whatever index it is on garage. But let's go back to what we were saying. So we know that if we're going to use pop, if we leave it blank, it'll take off the last item, which is kind of what we're looking for, right? We're looking to take Ducati off.
Right.
All right. So if we took our garage item, our object, excuse me, and then we attached pop to it, you can see that it's already working. It's taken the Ducati off. The Dukey's gone. But how are we going to catch that thing that we took off? This one is an intentionally tricky one. Like, intentionally tricky. Any ideas?
Garage dot insert and then
Insert.
index 0.
Oh, Harley, you nailed it. Man, I thought I was going to be sitting here for a couple minutes. Let's garage.insert. All right. Sorry, I heard another question or another idea. Let's talk through this. So I want to hear all the options, all the ideas.
I was thinking the same thing. Just use garage.insert and then garage.pop as an argument.
You nailed it. All right, so let's talk about this. So we know we have two tools to work with. We have garage.insert. Insert takes most of what we're doing here is we're trying to retrain our brains to think more aligned with the computers. We're thinking like coders now. So we know we're going to use two tools. Those tools could be in front of each other, behind each other, or nested inside each other. So garage.insert takes two parameters. The first parameter is where you want to put this thing, right? So we want to move something to the front of the list. So we'll just start this. The first item, the first index would be index 0. Then when we have more than one parameter, we have to separate it with commas. And then we have to figure out what that thing is. So we could just as easily say Ducati, right? We can manually put that in there. But if we're popping something off of our list, if we're going to utilize one of our tools that removes something but uses it in the removal process, we can just snuggle this guy right in here. Does that make sense? I know it's really esoteric, especially if you've never done this before, but we know what tools we need. We need a pop, and we got an insert. Insert tells us where we can slide something in, but it says, what am I going to put there? I could really quickly manually type Ducati, but I know I've got this other tool that's going to take something off, and if you take something off with pop, it returns what it took back. So for all intents and purposes, when we're saying garage pop, we're really just saying Ducati. Let me comment this out. If we say garage.pop, it's saying it's going to remove Ducati, but it basically takes on the role of Ducati. It's basically like saying Ducati. Does that make sense, guys? I don't expect it to, but I just want you to start feeling this new strain of thought right here.
So if you were to make it like two separate lines, like garage.pop with no index, and then below that garage.insert index 0, would it give you the same result, or would it not work that way?
Let's try it. Let's see. I'm gonna do a garage pop. That will first take off Ducati, so you can see garage has only got 2 elements now. And then if I put garage insert, we'll do one step at a time.
But garage insert with index 0.
Index 0, okay. So I want you to look at this while we do this. So it's right now saying insert expected 2 arguments. I expected you to give me 2 things. So I'm going to put 0 in there. Now it's updated. It said insert expected 2 arguments, got 1. We still have to fill something else in that that next parameter slot. We still have to give it one more argument.
Comma
So
Ducati.
what's that?
Comma Ducati.
Yeah, so we could do comma Ducati, and that would be completely valid. That would give us exactly what we were looking for. But like I said, more than one way to skin a cat, and some are being super efficient. This right here is the same as saying this right here. As far as results go, that's going to be funky, because as far as results go, these create the exact same result. As far as efficiency goes, I would say that this is probably more easier to read, at least from my perspective, but we're using our tools in one go. You can still do this. You could still, I mean, you could even go,
If I may, except the difference is inserting Ducati will keep putting Ducati first, whereas the second way, it'll put the next result will put Corvette at the front, right?
let me go back. Let me read through that. The only reason that it was out of order was because I had a pop up here. So I didn't comment out the garage pop. So pop had been taken off, and then is that what you were seeing? Because it was out of order, because I had done a garage pop and then I had done an insert, and it was shifting the list.
No, I guess what I'm thinking is, if you're going to pop out Ducati, but then you're reinserting Ducati to the front of the list, and if you run the code again, it'll put Ducati at the front of the list again. Whereas if you do the garage insert in 0 and then garage pop, the last item on the list at that point would be Corvette, so then it would put Corvette at the front of the list, or at the front of garage, and then pop out Corvette, so now Ducati would be second, and then if you run it a third time, Ferrari would be at the front of the list.
I think I see what you're saying. And Christian, that's really sound logic, but remember, these interpreters evaluate from top to bottom, left to right. So it'll go through once and it'll run all this code. You will always get the same result up until this point, and up in, as you go through. So your results will be consistent. The only time wouldn't be the same is if you had like a loop and you were actively changing the garage object, that list, as you were going through it. But if we're not doing any loops or fiddling with garage previous to here, our results are always going to be the same. We're not going to get the things out of order. But that's a really good observation. Did I kind of touch on what you were saying, or am I getting it completely wrong?
Yeah, because I was actually thinking in terms of it being a loop.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's a great point. So what Christian was saying, and then correct me again if I'm wrong, is if we were fiddling around with garage and we we're popping things off and inserting Ducati. There's a chance that somewhere, if we were looping through, if we were doing some kind of logic that messed with the contents of Garage, there would be situations where we would not have the exact same outcome because these items would not necessarily be in the same order to begin with. In a situation like that, you know what would be a great idea is exactly what Harley was talking about, using remove, because that would specifically remove only element Ducati and then put it back in.
Yeah, I got another dumb one.
Oh, please. I love it.
Okay, so on the right side of your screen where it's showing you the real-time visual of how the code would run,
Yes.
how do I open that?
Oh, okay. You'll see, did you add REPL to your extension list? Do you have that installed? Hey, REPL for
Wait, how do I
Python?
do that?
Okay, not a problem.
I
If
can come back to this if I don't want to derail your.
Yeah, let's come back to that. I'll show you that. Not a problem. Okay.
I can
Are
stay
we?
late after if it works better or something.
Yeah, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, cool. Guys, we're almost done with number 4. Did we do what we needed to do? We popped it. We inserted it back in. Oh, we've got one other thing. It's now asking us to insert whatever the value of new bike is into position number 2, which is index 1. All right. So that should be pretty simple because we're insert pros already. God, that sounds weird to say out loud. Anyway, I'm gonna. It's 8:04. I remember to cut that out of the video. Okay, guys. So help me insert new bike. How am I gonna do what this is asking for? We want it to go Ducati, whatever value of new bike is, which is ZX6R or 1R, excuse me, Ferrari and Corvette. How are we gonna get this guy in between these two? I'll give you a hint. We're going to use that same insert tool. It's tried and true. I want you to kind of visualize it though. Insert, it's taking a group of elements and it's kind of wedging in between them, and it doesn't destroy the element, it just shifts everything down. So if you were to look at it like one vertical stack, we've got element 0, element 1, element 2. We're trying to insert something in position 2 just after Ducati. We're going to insert and we're going to push everything down, and ZX1R is going to be there. So
garage dot insert open paren
okay.
1
Yep.
new bike.
New bike. But no quotes, right?
Correct.
Nailed it. All right. So Christian was spot on. So what we're saying is take the garage object, that list. I want you to wedge in spot 1 whatever the value of new bike is, which is ZX1R. Shift everything down, and sure enough, look at what we got. Ducati, ZX1R, Ferrari, Corvette. It's exactly what we're trying to accomplish. Great work, guys. God, I thought you guys were going to get hung up on level 4. You guys nailed it. Do you feel good about that? I mean, nothing? You guys are pros.
Yeah.
All right, I'll take it. The last thing I want to do is I want to print out our new list. So let's do that. So let's see what we got. At level 4, we got Ducati, ZX1R, Ferrari, Corvette. Perfect. All right. What is this madness? All right, it's 8:07. I don't want to hold you guys past 8. We got such a little time together, and it bums me out. Do you think we can jam through? We've only got 6 levels to go to. You think we can jam through levels 5 and level 6?
Sure.
All right, let's do it. Okay. This one's an interesting one. Somebody read level 5 for me. We're gonna nail this. Christian J, will you read level 5 for us? He's like, no, I'm gone, dude. I've been watching Game of Thrones for the last 20 minutes.
Worst ending.
Yeah. I haven't seen it. I'm still on season 1. Aditya, would you read level 5 for us, please?
Yeah. We're cooking with fire now. Now, programmatically, not manually, add elements from garage to one of 2 lists. Hint, we'll be using the slice. We want our cars, Corvette and Ferrari, in a cars list. Our motorcycles, Ducati and ZX6R, will go into a bikes list.
All right, it's getting rich now. All right. So, most of what we're doing is like solving a puzzle. It's like, has anybody ever done Sudoku where you only have a little bit of the puzzle and you're like, it can only be like a 5 or a 3 in this row and it's going to be a 1 over here, something like that?
Yep.
All right.
Yes.
So, let's go with what we do know. So far, we might not know programmatically how we're going to do this, but we know we're going to need 2 lists, cars and bikes. So at the very least, we can establish those parameters. We need to get in our variable list, car list, and a bike list. So is it safe to say we can start doing that real quick?
Yeah.
All right, give me the syntax. So how are you going to make cars happen?
Cars equals and then empty brackets.
There we go. And I'll do the same thing for, whoops, what am I doing? I'll do the same thing for bikes. All right, cool. And so far it's working. Now we've got 2 empty lists. 1 named bikes, 1 named cars. All right. We want to programmatically take elements from our garage and add them into these lists. So there's something interesting about what we did. I mean, it doesn't go car, bike, because that would be a pain in the ass. It goes bikes and cars. I wish there was some kind of filter that we could separate a list, starting with one element and ending with another element to kind of work with this stuff. If only there was something we could do and or use. I'll let you guys. What's that?
Would you use the colon?
You're absolutely right. I'm going to let you guys stew on this. I'm going to just start a print statement because I know we're going to get this in like no time flat.
Would it be cars equals garage, and then that would be outside of the brackets, and then brackets, the cars are first. Oh no, cars are second. So that'd be 2 colon.
2 colon. Let's take a look. Let's see what happens. Oh man, first try. Did that happen? Let's take a look. Cars, Ferrari and Corvette. All right. Let's see. Let's take a look at what's going on here. This filter that we're using, this slice, which is the colon, takes. You can do it with no parameters, which is basically saying give me everything. Or you can use a parameter on one side. You can do a parameter on either side. On one side, it's saying start with this, go up to but not past this. But if we do 2 and then colon, leave the other side blank, it's saying start at index 2. Let's take a look. Index 0, 1, 2, 3. It's saying take all those things and return those to me. But then we got smart and we added an assignment operator, and we're saying cars is actually equal to, it has everything that's in garage from index 2 to the very end. That was brilliant. That was elegant. That was really good. All right, so let's do the inverse. How can we turn this around so we get only the first two elements? Before we move on, is anybody confused about this notation, this syntax right here? The slice? Okay. If it comes up, it bubbles up, and we need a little refresher on slice on this notation, you let me know. All right, cool. Bikes. We want to get the first two items of the element, preferably by using the slice, that filter notation.
So just be :2.
Let's take a look. Let's see what we got. Wait, what am I getting an error for? Oh, I know why. Excuse me. It might help if we put the list that we're looking for. My apologies. All right, let's take a look. So we went, come on, come on. There we go. So let's see what we got for bikes. We've got Ducati and ZX1R. So we're saying start from the beginning, the first element of the list, and give me up until, but not including element 2. 0, 1, 0, 1, 2. Perfect. Brilliant. That was excellent. Another way I like to look at slice, and this might help when you're trying to figure out, because it's funky, give me everything up until but not including. I consider where the commas are, and if you imagine there's something before here, before the first element, that's where the slice is looking. Like here is the first position, or 0 position, here's the 1 position, here's the 2 position, right? It's a little easier for me to think of looking at how the list is parsed, and that's how slice is working, as opposed to looking at slice as everything up into but not including. Does that make sense? I'm just trying to give another perspective on that whole slice thing. I hope it does. All right. And because we're having fun in the sun, I'm going to just add a quick F string that prints it out for us. So we now have our garage full with everything, our bikes in the front, and we also have another string with just our cars, another string with just our bikes. All right. Last one. Can we hang in there 4 or 5 more minutes?
Yeah.
I think I lost everybody already. All right, we got one lone soldier. Let's do this. Pass.
I'm here.
All right, cool. Everybody's here. We're gonna use the delete function to destroy our garage. Oh, the humanity! So we're gonna pass the garage object to the delete function. What's that gonna look like for us?
Garage.del.
Garage.del. Let's go through it. Oh, we're getting an error.
Parentheses.
All right. Get a little bit of error, but you're on the right track. This is a common distinction that needs to be made. Usually we get into functions for this, but their functions and methods look very similar, right? They're predetermined pieces of code, and they've got a parenthesis. The biggest difference is methods are attached to objects. Functions themselves are the object. And there's no better way of like learning this than just making the mistake. I'll be completely honest with you, Christian. So you were spot on. The only thing is, delete is not a method, it's a function. So instead of trying to use the delete action, that delete tool on garage, because it doesn't exist, we actually need to call a function called del and pass garage as one of the parameters. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really weird, and I'll be honest, I do it all the time. I completely confuse like what's a function, what's a method? Like is this the no, replace is not the function, it's the method. Okay, got it. So it's just, you know, learning it, going through it, and just figuring out what your favorite functions and methods are. Um, the good thing is about functions is they're consistent for most objects of like type. You know, all number functions are going to work on all numbers. You know, string functions are going to work on strings and characters. You don't have to worry about too much deviation from that. But let's take a look at what happened. So we took delete, the function, and we passed it our garage object. Well, you can't see my hand in the camera. I'm going to use this hand. We took our garage object and we threw it into the delete function, which, in all intents and purposes, deletes something. And you'll see garage is now gone from our variable list. I'm going to comment it out. There's garage. Let's delete it again. Now it's gone. So we're going to do something. For bits and giggles, let's try and print garage and see what happens. Any ideas on what's going to happen? Any thoughts?
Variable not defined error.
Let's take a look. If only I could type. Exactly right. Garage is not defined. It's no longer in namespace. It's the lovely little universe where all the things that we declare exist. And essentially what we've done, and effectively is with delete, is we've taken it and I don't want to say we've removed it because we'll learn a little bit more about the nuances of memory later, but it's no longer accessible. If it's no longer accessible, it's not defined. So I'm gonna comment that out, and now we're gonna try something else. Let's make garage equal to bikes and cars. I want you guys to take a look at something. There we go. We've taken garage, even though it's been deleted. We have not redeclared a new list, but we took bikes and cars, which themselves are lists, and we said this word, this thing in namespace, this object that we're creating with our sorcery, and we are now saying bikes plus cars is now in garage. We're assigning those values into garage. Python was so smart that when we print garage, sure enough, guys, it prints a list, which is pretty much the same thing as us going garage is equal to, and then all the things we've listed before. So if you could take anything from this, I'd like you to at least appreciate the inference that the Python programming languages makes when we're trying, because if you remember, we can't add numbers and strings together. It'll give us an error. But we throw two like items that are lists, and Python's so smart, it's like, I bet you want to make garage a list. I bet you do. Let's do it. Let's make a list. Sure enough, we've got a list. If I were to take the type function and pass it garage, right here it's saying the thing that you're you're asking me for? You want to know what type it is? It's a list. We kind of got a little ethereal here, trying to talk about adding lists together. But does that make sense that the Python programming language is so competent that it sees what you're doing and it tries to infer, for better or worse? I mean, it could very well, and it frequently does, screw you up because it thinks it knows what you want to do. But it's so smart that it's like you're taking two lists. You obviously want another list. Let me do this for you. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah.
Yep.
Very cool. All right. Well, you know what? Truth be told, we will not have time to get to operators. I don't want you to freak out about that because operators are pretty simple. I could sum them up for you in a table. I'm going to give you a long-winded explanation anyway, but I know you're going to get them right away. And then we'll review them. But more importantly, do we feel comfortable? Do we feel like we made some gains by going through this project together as a group?
Yep.
Yeah? So
Yes.
Yes.
okay. Does anybody have any concerns about this kind of layout, about us building on our knowledge with theory and then spending more time in this space playing around like this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I like it better than the just doing the command prompt.
Yeah, yes. I think you'll find that it's a little more forgiving, it's a little more informational. And the cool thing is about it, when you start to, and we're going to go through in some of the theory lecture talking about how we can use tools better, but you'll see like you can hover over something, and of course it's not doing it for me. Why is it not giving me hints on delete? So it gives you hints about what you're using. So it's saying garage. Garage is a list. Bikes is a list. You know, type. It tells us what it is. The object's type, its name, and then, you know, essentially how to use it. Usually it'll tell us what parameters are necessary, how we instantiate it. If I had pop by itself, I'm sure it would not poop. That's not good. Oh well, shit. I don't know why it's not working. But typically, when you start to enter in functions or methods, it'll help you define them. It'll tell you what's expected. And we also have REPL now, which will give us some good indication of what we're missing if something does go wrong. Plus, I like being able to know exactly where something screwed up. Oh, of course, now it's working. um, if I'm missing something, and all of a sudden it's like screaming at me like, "Hey, dummy, spell print properly." All right. That is all I'm going to force you guys to suffer through tonight. If there are any additional questions I can answer, I'll be happy to stick around. I hope you found this helpful. I hope you think this new format is more enlightening than just hearing me yak for an hour. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you guys as a group just tear through some code and really make some gains. So this assignment will be, I'm going to take it down. I only use it for the lecture, and I'll put it back, fixing a couple of errors that I saw that I made, giving some stuff away and stuff like that. I want you guys to meet up in the discussion board. I want you to talk about the projects. I want you to share ideas. I want you to bounce failure off of each other, because that's, I mean, 90% of coding is just troubleshooting and debugging anyway. So if you get it right on the first time, good for you. I don't think I've ever done that before. And then I want you to feel the progression. I want you to feel like you're getting something out of these type of projects instead of just regurgitating stuff back. All right? Are we good with this?
Justin,
Yes.
what is this? What do you call this ID? Is it downloadable?
Yeah, this
One
is
that you're
Visual
using?
Studio Code. And I'm actually going to upload a video on my entire setup. I actually need to create a new virtual machine because all of my computers have VSC on it, and I want to give you a fresh start look on how I build it. But you can just go, I think it's code.visualstudio.com.
Mhm.
Where is it? Code.visualstudio.com. And and that's how you can download it. There's two flavors of this, one that is installed and one that's um, the user installer, which means you don't need system permissions to install it. So if you're on a work computer or something like that, you can use the user installer, and it'll do it without permissions for you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. My pleasure. All right, guys. Go forth, make great code, have a fantastic weekend. Let me know if there's anything else I can do to help you. And, you got my number, you got my contact. I'm here for you. All right.
Thank you, Justin. See ya.
My pleasure. Have a great weekend, guys.
Thanks.
Thank
See
you.
ya.
too.
Thank you. Bye.
If you don't mind, could you really briefly go over that thing with me?
Absolutely.